finally, let's just end up with this one. Obviously, it's Bills Ravens. We're gonna have a deeper conversation on this game in just a minute. But do you want me to go? You want to
Sure,
start?
go ahead. Yep.
Okay. Listen, I've already said before, I do think that the Ravens are gonna win this. I think. Listen, both teams. This is interesting to me. Both teams kind of sat their stars. Neither Lamar Jackson nor Josh Allen really played in the preseason, and so there's a chance of hopefully not sloppiness. I mean, even Todd Monken said the other day they were like, "What's your key?" And he's like, "Playing clean football. Can we please not have penalties? Can we not have all the turnovers, all that kind of stuff?" So I think the Ravens are going to be very mindful of playing clean football. They obviously have a lot of motivation because of the way things ended last year. They won't be able to exact a full measure of revenge. But with these two teams not playing their stars in the preseason, I think the Ravens still have an advantage, though, because they're bringing back all but one starter from last season. And then the one starter that's new actually started in the beginning of last season and just lost his job. So I think the Ravens have the advantage of having continuity and maybe be able to come in with a clean bill of. I mean, they're healthy for the most part. Obviously, we just talked about Pat Ricard. That's going to be massive. That it seems like he's going to be gone. So maybe I'm downplaying that aspect, but I think with the motivation that's on their side, the continuity on offense from last year. I like the Ravens in this game to open up the season 1-0 and get a little bit of an advantage in that seeding for the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, this is all about channeling emotions, right? There's going to be a lot of emotions running through their veins going into this one and the rematch and everything that took place 6+ months ago. They have to get better at polish from a discipline standpoint. They were penalized way too often, both in the postseason and in that week 4, what was a rout. Even in the rout, the Ravens were heavily penalized. So you got to clean that up. You obviously have to protect the football. We know what happened in the first half in January. And I think the Ravens are going to have a chance, led by Lamar and Todd Monken, to expose and exploit an area where I want to talk to Mike more about, and that is the secondary. Trey White is banged up. We'll see where Christian Benford, even though he is trending towards playing, it certainly seems that way if you follow the injury reports and whatnot. He's super talented for them on the back end, but there's also some inexperience out there that they might be leaning on. And I think if Lamar has an opportunity to use some of his deep play threats and man, whether it be Zay, Bate, even D-Hop, there could be some chunk play opportunities there. And to your point, this Pat Ricard loss, assuming that something out of left field doesn't happen with his availability over the next couple of days, is a big one. But it's a great day and a great time to have the deepest tight end room in the league, which they do have. And we've already talked about the double-headed monster that Mark Andrews and Charlie Kohler can very well be. And we're not expecting Isaiah Likely to be here. So I will go 28-24. Revenge is served, at least for the time being, in a Ravens victory. But they could very well end up seeing this team again for all the Marbers, or at least in the divisional round game or whatever it is, 6 months from now, 5 months from now in the month of January. So I'm going 28-24 Ravens.
Yeah, no matter what happens, to your point, in this game, it's a long season, and both teams, as long as Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are healthy, both teams are going to be in the playoffs. So this is all about seeding. This is all about just trying to start off on the right foot. The Ravens, I think, needed a bit more than Buffalo due to the Ravens' schedule and how many playoff teams from last year they faced in just the first 7-8 weeks or right before the bye. So I think the Ravens needed a bit more than the Bills will, given their future opponents.
Well, your friend Mike Catalana is in the waiting room, so we might as well bring him in a few minutes early. And Mike, if you want to give us the thumbs up, if you want to come on a few minutes early, then you can do exactly that. And Sarah, you joined Mike earlier this week on the Buffalo Plus YouTube program, and man, that thing is popping off. So good on you both for a great program there. And Mike joins us for his Bills perspective, and you can go follow him on social media. In this case, as you see on screen, on X or Twitter, at Mike Catalana. And Mike, pleased to meet you virtually here. And thanks for having Sarah on and promoting the show and everything. We're looking forward to obviously kind of getting things off on the right foot here because for Ravens fans last year, I think that heartbreak still very much exists. The Bills went on obviously to fall one game short of the Super Bowl, but we're very curious about the Buffalo perspective going into this rematch week 1.
Yeah, good to be with you guys, Sarah. It was great the other day. The video's doing really well. I always like to give Bills fans that perspective. Like, I hope I can do for your viewers today on the team that in our case, that the Bills are playing this week. And yeah, first games, as you guys know, can be wild, right? Sometimes it's very unexpected the way teams play. These teams, even though they haven't played that many times, they know each other pretty well, playing twice last year and in the playoffs. So I'm looking forward to it, though. I have to say, I heard you guys talking about it with the Bills, and there's some definite question marks. The majority of them are on the defensive side of the ball heading into the game.
I have a question about that in a minute on the defense and their game plan. But before we get there, for Ravens fans that haven't been paying close attention to the Bills in the offseason, obviously this is one of the last games that we both teams have played. The Ravens, it was the last game. Obviously, the Bills, you guys went on and just had that Chiefs game. What are the key differences between on the roster, maybe even in coaching, for the Bills from the last time we met in January to them meeting on Sunday?
Yeah, I think it's really the defensive side of the ball in terms of personnel. Like, they went out heavy in the draft and brought players in, 2 defensive tackles, really 3 corners, though one's going to probably end up playing safety. And they needed to do that. They needed to revamp things on this defense. It had been a calling card of Sean McDermott and the defense and the team for years, and they really have faltered in the last year plus. They lost Poyer and Hyde, even though Jordan Poyer is back now on the practice squad. He will not be activated for the game on Sunday, but they just needed to be different. So different is one thing. They've made those changes. They signed 2 free agents on the defensive line, and both of them are suspended. So I've tried to tell Bills fans they need the word patience. And I know it's hard for fans to be patient. I just think this Bills defense is going to look a lot different when we get to week 7, 8, 9, and 10, when the players who are injured are back, including the number 1 pick, and when the players who are suspended are back. So they're different now. Doesn't mean they won't go out and compete on Sunday, but it's going to be something to see how this defense plays.
I listened to a ton of press conferences so far this week, Mike, and the sentiment is that there was a level of embarrassment from week 4, and obviously they went and turned that around with a victory in not decisive fashion, but last minute fashion.
Yeah,
in that divisional round game. We know the presence of Derrick Henry and what he did to them really from the jump in week 4, and he had some chunks, but they cleaned them up a little bit. In that divisional round game. Just how much do you think this team is still almost remembering what happened less than a year ago on this same type of format, Sunday Night Football? It was in Baltimore, of course. This time it'll be on their home turf. But how much are they remembering just how much this ground game gashed them that day? And they were down injuries, right? Matt Milano wasn't out there, and several other guys on the defensive line, if memory serves.
Yeah, they were. I'll tell you one guy who's remembering it is Cole Bishop. He's a rookie last year, and he gets thrown into that game because of injuries, and he did not fare well against Derrick Henry. Not surprising, as a lot of guys do that. So here's Cole Bishop now, limited amount of play last year. I won't say it was given, but was put in a position to say, I think they wanted him to be the starter, 2nd-round pick, and DeMar Hamlin was there before. They liked DeMar, but not really as a starter. So Cole Bishop's sort of been in that spot. Then he gets hurt. Then he's been back. I'll say they called him out. They basically said during camp, really during the preseason, like, hey, we still got to figure out who our starter is going to be. And it's going to be Cole Bishop. So he lines back up on the field. And who's on the other side again but Derrick Henry? So that's a welcome to the league. And then you've got the new guys, Deion Walker and TJ Sanders. And they're telling us, they're literally saying to their teammates, like, Is Derrick Henry really that big? And is Lamar Jackson really that fast? And by the way, their teammates said yes and yes when they had to describe them. But think about that. Here's your NFL debut, and those 2 guys are coming at you. So, it's, I guess sometimes ignorance can be bliss, right? Maybe. But I think that's tough matchups for especially the new guys who are going to play a prominent role.
So diving in a little bit more on the defense, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the Bills really like that 2 safety high look. The Ravens see a loaded box more often. With Derek and Lamar back there, do you see them changing that up at all? And then kind of with that, it seemed like they kept the 2 safety high look in the divisional round, but they just blitzed like crazy. 48.4% of the time they blitzed Lamar Jackson, which was the 5th highest blitz rate in a game under Sean McDermott and the highest since 2021 of week 15. So I guess that your thoughts on the two safety high look and the amount that they'll blitz.
All right. So the biggest difference is, again, I said Damar Hamlin is a guy they like, but I really believe they like him as a backup and a special teams guy. When he's just back there in that defense, they know his limitations. And I think every team does. And I think the Chiefs certainly did that when they got to the AFC Championship game. You don't have that versatility you need in your safeties. And I don't need to tell you guys with the most versatile safety in the NFL. So I do think at least Cole Bishop physically, they can interchange he and Taylor Rapp. So I think that will be helpful, at least in a structural point where Lamar's looking and not sure what the safeties are going to do. And you'll see a lot of Dorian Williams. I mean, the Bills' base defense is obviously Taron Johnson playing in the nickel, and he will be out there, but they get Dorian Williams on the field a lot when they're going against a team like the Ravens, especially the Ravens. And I think they saw a lot of that. And I think the strength on this defense, no doubt, is Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, who is healthy, which makes a big difference, and Dorian Williams. And I think they'll accentuate that in this game to try to do their best because the D-line depth is going to be tested. I mean, they've got 2 rookies, and we're not really sure. Maybe Jordan Phillips gets activated. And on the D ends, you've got Joey Bosa now. And obviously, you got Greg Rousseau. But the backups behind them is like A.J. Epinesa. They're not sure exactly what they have in depth on that D-line. So I think they're going to try to do some stuff there, maybe even a little more blitzing than they normally would do to try to cross up the Ravens a bit.
Mike, let's take a quick peek as of yesterday, and we have a couple updates to this injury report that Sarah and I already discussed during the live stream, and I'll repeat them in just a second. One of them is Tyler Bass. He showed up as a DNP Thursday. I saw Sean McDermott told reporters today, meaning Friday, for those that are watching this over the weekend or whatever, that he is a DNP today as well. So Matt Prater looking like he might be, practice squad call up. They just brought him in, right, as a veteran. And so he's on this list. Christian Benford sure looks like he's been upgraded. He's going to give this thing a go. When you take a look at this list just from 1,000 feet up, I mean, Keon Coleman is on this list. He popped up recently with a groin. He gave Brandon Stevens fits last year. Talented, big body wide receiver that seems to have some chemistry with Josh with some of those 50-50 balls. Trey White, who, of course, spent part of last year after the deadline in Baltimore, returns to Buffalo this offseason. The Ravens certainly let him walk to test free agency. Khalil Shakir looks like he's going to be good to go. What should we be watching, I guess, with this list?
Trey White's not going to play. I mean, he hasn't practiced for over 3 weeks. And you guys know it's a rarity for a player to not practice during the week and play in a game. And let's be honest, a big game, but it's the first game of the season. And it's been over 3 weeks. It's a lower body injury. We believe it's a groin injury, but that hasn't been, I don't think they've ever officially confirmed that. So Trey not even out on the field. I don't think he's going to play. I think Christian Benford is fine. Keon Coleman is fine. Khalil Shakir is fine. They're all good to go. But without Trey White out there, I think you're going to see rookie Dorian Strong get that start. He's a 6th round pick. And the oddity of this is he's starting next to a 6th round pick because that's what Christian Benford was out of Villanova. And he started week 1. So Kaiir Elam, who was the number 1 pick that year, was playing for the Cowboys last night. Actually made a couple of nice plays. He was the number 1 pick, but Benford beat him out and started, at least they both played, but started game 1 as a rookie. And I think there's a good chance Dorian Strong plays. And for you guys, you may get a kick out of this. They're both Baltimore guys. Dorian said he definitely grew up as a Ravens fan. And he said, by the way, that fandom is over now. And Christian Benford said he didn't watch a lot of football, but he watched the Ravens. He grew up in Baltimore and all. So kind of funny, but that may very well be the case at the starting corners. So you could have a 6th round pick rookie starting in one of those spots on Sunday night.
That's a lot to take on in a first start for a rookie. Mike, I wanted to ask you a question that you actually asked me on your show. But as the guest, I'm the one talking, and you didn't give your perspective, but I wanted to hear it. So you pointed out that as much as like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are like the headliners, right? They were MVP candidates all last year, and they typically are. But then when they play each other, their numbers both seem to be lower. So obviously, in that divisional round game, Lamar had 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, but also had the 2 turnovers. So not like a banner day for him until the second half. Josh only had to do 140 yards combined passing and rushing with 2 rushing touchdowns. So I gave my perspective. What's your perspective of why, when these two teams meet, that it's not like Lamar and Josh just completely going off and taking over the games?
Yeah, it's funny because they haven't played that many times, though I love the fact that they both came off the bench as rookies in their first game in that blowout by the Ravens. But neither quarterback has really been great. I mean, if you go back to the playoff game before when they played in the divisional round, I mean, Josh Allen was pretty pedestrian in that game. And Lamar, everybody knows, had the big turnover to Taron Johnson late. I'd say that Lamar game was the best game either of the quarterbacks have played against each other when they played in Baltimore last year. I thought he and obviously Henry took over the game, made big plays, and they were on their way to totally dominating. The Bills made that little run. But if you remember, Josh Allen didn't have a great game and then nearly got severely injured on that bad trick play they tried to run. So the offense was a little, it struggled against the Ravens. I don't know if it's just because it's been a limited amount of times they've played and the defenses have played well. I'd say I do think the Bills, when healthy, have matched up pretty well against the Ravens in the past. I'm wondering about this because of the guys who aren't going to play. But I guess at any point that could change. It's like when Josh plays against Mahomes, they both seem to have big games, right? And so it didn't start out that way, but then they've played so many times that talent comes out. But I think, not to simplify it, but the Bills won that game and they won all last year because they don't turn the ball over, or did not last year. And that defense, which was kind of weak, forced a lot of turnovers. That was the difference in the game. So, obviously you play this game. If Lamar doesn't turn the ball over, I think the Bills are going to have a heck of a time beating the Ravens. I think that's going to be the difference.
Mike, these two draft classmates just fascinate me. Don't they fascinate us? They're just so different people, but
yeah, we were at that draft down in Dallas. And of course, everybody, they were excited about Josh Allen, didn't know much about him. And and I remember when I think it was the Eagles had won the Super Bowl and they traded to the Ravens, and we're like, oh, what's going to happen? Because we had talked to Lamar the day before the draft, along with all the quarterbacks at an event. And it was funny because a lot of Bills fans were very interested in if Lamar could be their pick. And I asked him that day in a scrum of reporters, what's your contact with the Bills been? And he said, I haven't talked to the Bills. So I was like, oh, okay. So I ended up tweeting that out. And I got all these people like yelling at me saying, no, he did. He did. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe he only talked to a position coach or a coordinator. I don't know. In his opinion, he didn't talk to the Bills, which is kind of wild because he was one of the prominent quarterbacks, but they obviously had their eyes on Josh. So I think what they've both done is incredible. I think there's differences, but similarities in those guys in Kansas City standing in their way. So I love watching them play. Maybe Sunday night is the night we see them both play like the great players they are.
Yeah. And where I was going with that is just Josh's offseason. I mean, an MVP offseason. The New Balance endorsement drops today. The marriage happens earlier in the offseason. The extension happens. And, of course, the MVP along with a phenomenal statistical season. Obviously, for when you compare it to Lamar, sure, it was south of where Lamar was statistically. But the turnovers, I think you've already kind of alluded to this. He cleaned that up and significantly cleaned that up. And I would imagine that MVP voters saw that on top of just this entire turnaround for him as a player. And I just listened to one of his recent interviews with Siciliano about how he's feeling, the fact that he's taking care of himself more on the field. So it's a long way of asking you, where do you think Buffalo is right now in the Josh Allen evolution, and where can he take his game now coming off of all the, I mean, with all this greatness comes even greater expectations. So
yeah,
how do you see him handling that?
I think he handles all of that really well. I will only say this. It was an incredible year he had. 6 total turnovers. 6? Yeah. They didn't have a running back fumble the entire year. I mean, that doesn't happen. A wide receiver didn't lose a fumble the entire year. I think that's tough to replicate. I think Josh and the offense were so disciplined last year. You know, this mantra they have that everybody eats. They have that because they don't have a guy who steps up to the table first. Now, that could be Khalil Shakir. He's a really good player, but they don't have that guy. So Josh has used the idea of like, I'll get the ball to anybody, and it works. And it's taken away maybe him taking some chances that he maybe did in the past. But I think he handles everything so well. And I think he's become, obviously, he's a smart quarterback. He says he doesn't take as many risks in protecting himself. Last year in the opening game, he tried the hurdle against the Cardinals, got in the end zone, ended up hurting himself. And then you saw in the Ravens game when he tried to throw the ball on that terrible trick play. So he still does that. But as a guy, I got to tell you, he is really something to watch. He is disciplined with his teammates. He's close with a lot of them. I mean, this guy's got a handshake with every one of his teammates. It's kind of crazy. It sounds funny, but like, I think he's that guy. And you talk to the people who work with the Bills and, you know, even off the record, like I don't hear anything that he ever big times anybody. And if anybody could, it's him. But there is pressure, right? Because you've been great, but we know how we judge quarterbacks. You live it in Baltimore. He's in that same spot as Lamar. MVP's great. You got to get to the big game. So I think he feels that, and he feels the pressure of carrying the organization, which he does. I mean, that stadium that's being built, I don't know if that gets built without 17 on the Bills. I don't know if it was done as easily. I mean, it's the house that Josh built. So is that big expectations? But he seems to handle it at every stage.
Okay, so outside, we'll get you out of here on this. Outside of turnovers, because that's obviously huge.
Yep.
What is the key to this game, or one or two? And if you're comfortable, what's your prediction of what happens in the end? Who wins it?
Yeah, look, I honestly think the Bills can still move the ball on offense. They basically have their offense and their O-line. I think they will score points in the game. I think they'll play well. To me, the key is, you know, God, I don't want to sound like Jerry Jones, stopping the run, because that is going to be an issue for them. I think if the Ravens wanted to come out and say, okay, let's see what you can do, because I don't know if this group can do it. We'll see. And especially when they go to the bench, you know, they say we like to rotate. We like to rotate. Okay, you got a lot of kids coming off the bench. Let's see if they can handle it against these guys. I think if the Bills can, it's not about putting Lamar in a spot where he's got to throw and you don't think he can beat you. You know he can beat you. But if they're just running it down your throat, you got no chance in the game. And be honest, I think the Ravens have helped them. Even last year, where you saw a little less of Derrick Henry, I would have that guy out there all the time. He scares the hell out of them. He should. So that's what it is. And honestly, we just did our live podcast last night. I got a few boos when I said it, but I've got the Ravens winning the game 27-23. I think, and I still have the Bills winning the division. I still have the Bills possibly a top seed. I think they have an easier schedule. And I have the two teams meeting in the AFC Championship, which would be
over the
great
Chiefs.
to see.
Who do you have taking down the Chiefs?
Honestly, I think they're going to end up playing the Broncos in the playoffs. I think that could work out just depending on how they fall. I'm with you a little bit, Bobby. I think I like that Broncos team a lot. They were a little early to the party last year when they came to play the Bills, but they got a lot of talent on that team, and Peyton can coach. So I think they're going to give them a hard time. Let's see how it plays. It'd be wild to see the Chiefs not win a division, but it could happen this year, and a little more pressure there. But it could also be either the Bills or the Chiefs or the Ravens getting them at home, how it matches up. I mean, ideally, if you're the Ravens or the Bills, you'd want to go through the other two in hindsight.
Yeah.
But when it's happening, you don't want those teams. You just want any route possible to the Super Bowl. But I think they're going to meet in the AFC Championship. But I do think the Ravens win a little bit of that payback, whatever you take of that. And I think the Bills, I will say in fairness, with a little bit of their injuries and youth, I think it's going to be a tough stretch for them to start this first game.
Sarah, the Denver buzz is following you. You
Who knew? I'd be on the island thinking that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win the AFC West. I can't believe I'm on an island over here.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike, we got your Twitter up here. We really appreciate your time, and thanks for having Sarah on. I just realized I missed a message from you over Twitter within the last few weeks, so apologies there.
No problem. No problem.
But here you are on X. It's at Mike Catalana, and let everybody know if they want the Bills' perspective over the next couple days, what you have coming up, and where they might be able to find you outside of Twitter and YouTube.
Yeah, that really, I'm on the local ABC and Fox affiliate, so TV wise, we're here. But Twitter and YouTube, and look, I've been doing this. This is 38 years covering the Bills. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. They got us all over the place now. So basically everything we do, it's just my first and last name there together. And our brand is Buffalo Plus. So all of our Bills coverage goes on Buffalo Plus. So I got Jenna and Dan. They're awesome. That's our team. So that's who you can check out. Bills coverage all the time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Enjoy the game. And we hope to do it again if your prediction comes true.
All right. Playoff time. Sounds good.
Thanks, Mike.